This is Julian speaking, welcoming you to another battle report out of the breach. We're in week 6 of the FateofEric event, and that means we are still in phase 3. In this phase, you can choose to give Eric the Unsure 2 upgrades of your choice. Remember to submit your games on your preferred social media platform and add the hashtag FateofEric to participate in the event and help to decide the fate of Eric. Eric the Unsure will fight for the Leshavult this time and has 2 upgrades attached to him. Bernd decided to keep Leshavult's vessel on Eric and added the enchanted weapon. When dealing damage, Eric can choose to ignore enemy passive abilities once per turn. When playing against the Commonwealth, it could come in quite handy. Let's see if Eric can deal some damage and be reborn in this upcoming battle. Here you see the depth of the Moonstones on the battlefield. Here you see the 8 characters who want to fight for the Leshavult. And here the 8 characters for the Commonwealth. The Leshavult win the first roll-off and choose to be the early bird, and Brother Daniel knows about a lovely Moonstone and stands right next to it. Mama Gimbal also sees a stone she wants to harvest. Lubot hears Daniel in the back and decides to go up front and center. Quarrel stands next to a Moonstone, not too worried to fall behind, because he has his trusty crossbow with him. And the hero of our story, Eric the Unsure, walks over to his new cultist friend and feels quite safe in his company. Bold and brave young Jack appears, ready to see some action. Callista steps out of the forest and keeps her eye on the Moonstone in front of her. Billy rides next to Mama Gimbal. Gwendoline appears, already knowing why she should travel with Eric. And Graddock walks over to Jack and lightens his pipe, ready to see what a new battle can bring. Turn 1. The Commonwealth has the initiative and hands the first activation over to the Leshavult. Brother Daniel harvests twice to pick up the stone, jogs and steps once. Graddock jogs and rests on his 2 energy. Callista steps twice to get in base contact with the Moonstone, harvests once and jogs in cover behind the huge rock. Mama Gimbal harvests twice to pick up the stone, jogs, and uses a mother's love on Graddock. Gwendoline spends 4 energy to scry, and can pick up the top card of the arcane deck, and Bernd can add the card to an arcane attack or defense hand. And then she jogs over to be in base contact with the Moonstone. And Graddock takes a reaction step. Billy jogs and steps twice to get in base contact with the Moonstone, and harvests once to get the stone down to a 1. Lubart jogs to get in cover and rests on his 2 energy. Young Jag jogs, steps twice, and Lubart takes a reaction step. And Jag spends 1 energy for Lucky, and can see the top 5 cards of the arcane deck, and put any number back on top of the deck and the rest on the bottom. These on top and these at the bottom. Eric jogs and spends 1 energy for a revitalize on Lubart and declares a green 3. Jack screams okay because he knows, and Eric can transfer 2 energy to Lubart because he just has 2 energy left. And Graddock takes a reaction step. Quarrel harvests twice to pick up the stone, jogs and steps once. And Lubart takes 2 reaction steps to get within 6 inches of Brother Daniel, ready for some energy in turn 2. Turn 2. Despite the +2, the Commonwealth loses the initiative, but Bernd is generous and hands the first activation to me. In the replenish step, Brother Daniel shouts, "Look at the shiny thing!" and Lubart gains 1 energy. Billy harvests to pick up the stone, jogs, and spends 2 energy to use Hi-ho, Silver! He gains +1 arcane because he is within 4 inches of Mama Gimbal. He needs any pink or green to move twice that distance, and he declares a pink 2 and can move 4 inches. Gwendoline spends 2 to pick up the stone, jogs for 2 and spends 3 to cast Rejuvenate on Lubart. She declares a pink 3. The Commonwealth calls okay, and Lubart heals 4 and is moved 3 inches. Graddock spends 1 energy to use Forgetfulness on Lubart to remove 1 arcane or active ability from him until the end of the turn, and Lubart forgets his righteous fury. Graddock jogs a bit and rests on his last energy. Brother Daniel jogs over to the Moonstone, harvests to pick it up, and steps twice. Mama Gimbal jogs and spends 1 energy to use her once per game ability, Mother's Wrath, and every other friendly gnome within 3 inches gains 1 energy, and she rests on her last 2 energy. Eric the Unsure jogs to get in base contact with the Moonstone and rests on his 3 energy. Growl jogs to get a clear line of sight on Brother Daniel and shoots his crossbow at him. He declares no card, spends 2 energy to reload and his last energy to shoot again, and declares a green 1. The Leshavult accept, and Daniel suffers 2 wounds and is pushed 1 inch away. Callista jogs and spends 3 energy to cast a Leshavult's Caress on Eric. She declares a pink 1 and Eric gains protection. And Mama Gimbal takes a reaction step. Young Jack jogs to be in base contact with the Moonstone and Lubart takes a reaction step to engage Jack. And Jack attacks Eric. And Eric spends 1 energy to go for it. Jack plays 2 low guards and Eric a fallen swing. Jack upgrades the low guard to his signature move, Shield Bash. He would deal 4 damage against a fallen swing, but just removes the protection. Eric declares to use his enchanted weapon to ignore Jack's ancestral shield and can deal 2 wounds. During the end step, Eric is pushed 4 inches away because of the critical shield bash. Jack spends 1 energy for his magic brew and declares a blue 2. The Leshavult call OK and Jack heals for 2. And Eric takes a reaction step. Jack rests on his last 2 energy. Lubart attacks Jack, and Lubart has to show his combat cards and reveals a low guard, 2 high guards, and 2 fallen swings. Lubart plays a fallen swing and Jack a thrust. Lubart can deal 1 wound because he gains +2 on impact damage for his sensor chain, and Jack reduces every damage by 1. Jack takes a reaction step away from Lubart. Lubart jogs to be outside of 2 inches of Jack, and Jack takes a reaction step to get out of Lubart's engagement range. Turn 3. We both roll a 6 for the initiative, but Brother Daniel uses Slightly Maddening to ask me kindly for a reroll, and I roll a 1 and the initiative goes to the Leshavult, and Bernd hands the first activation to me. Brother Daniel gives Lubart 1 energy. Graddock uses Forgetfulness on Lubart, jogs over to him but stays within 4 inches of Mama Gimbal and rests on his last energy. Gwendoline spends 4 energy to scry, jogs and steps once. Mama Gimbal spends 1 energy for a mother's love on young Jack. She moves, he cannot move but heals for 2. She jogs and rests on 2 energy. Callista casts Leshavult's Caress on Lubart and declares a pink 1 and has to reveal it because of Graddock's Smell a Lie ability. Every time an enemy model targets him or another model within 2 inches of him, the arcane card has to be revealed, and Lubart gains protection. And Callista jogs forward to be at Lubart's side. Quarrel uses Brothers in Arms 3 times on young Jack and jogs behind him. Eric jogs to engage Graddock and attacks. Eric plays a sweeping cut and Graddock a low guard, and nothing happens. And Eric attacks again. He plays a thrust and Graddock a sweeping cut, but there is no follow-up card to do damage in my hand, and no damage is dealt. And Eric rests on his last energy. Jack jogs over to Callista and attacks her. He can draw 9 cards. He has a melee stat of 4, +1 for Mama Gimbal, +3 for Brothers in Arms, +2 because he initiated the attack, and -1 because Lubart is also engaging him. He plays 3 rising attacks, and Callista 2 sweeping cuts. He can deal 8 damage to her, and she is slain on the spot. But before she leaves, she can deal 3 wounds on Jack. Eric gains 1 energy, and Lubart takes a reaction step away from Jack. Jack spends 1 for Magic Brew and can draw 6 cards. He has an Arcane of 2, plus 1 for Mama Gimbal, and because of Brothers in Arms, another plus 3. And he declares the pink 3 and gains 3 energy. Jack steps once and attacks Eric. And Eric spends 1 energy to go for it. He plays 2 low guards and Eric a fallen swing. Jack can deal 4 wounds on Eric, and Eric declares his enchanted weapon to deal 2 wounds on Jack. And Eric is pushed 4 inches away. And Jack rests on his last 2 energy. Lubart attacks Jack, and Jack spends 1 to go for it. And Lubart has to show his hand. 2 rising attacks, a sweeping cut, a thrust, and a fallen swing. And Lubart plays a rising attack, and Jack a low guard, and can play a fallen swing as follow-up attack to remove the protection. And Mama Gimbal takes a reaction step. Lubart attacks again, and Jack spends 1 to go for it. Lubart plays a thrust, and Jack a fallen swing. Jack is slain, but can deal 2 wounds on Lubart before that.
Wait a minute!
Hello, this is Editing Julian speaking. I'm sitting here in Bristol, working on the battle report for next week, and now that. Jack would not die from the attack. As my calculations go, he has 2 wounds, suffers 2 damage because of the thrust, but can reduce the damage by 1 and is not slain. Maybe it's late, or the heat of battle blurred the wounds on the card during the game. Either way, we have to deal with it. Back to the game. Eric is more than 4 inches away, so no energy for him. And Graddock takes a reaction step. Billy jogs and steps, and I forgot his slow movement because he is carrying a Moonstone. Sorry for that. And Eric takes a reaction step. Billy attacks Lubart and spends 1 energy to go for it. Lubart has to show his 2 combat cards and has 2 thrusts in hand. Billy plays a sweeping cut, can deal 1 wound, and can follow up with a thrust to deal another 3 wounds. Brother Daniel jogs and spends 2 energy for a bell ringer and doesn't want to put down a card. Mama Gimbal takes a reaction step. And Daniel steps once. And that's the end of turn 3. I am still sorry for the 4-inch jog with Billy. I have to put the slow token on my models with Moonstones. Callista was a bit reckless to join Lubart in the front row, but Jack is also gone, so not too bad of a trade. 3-3, but my stones are very close to Lubart, and that makes me very uncomfortable. Let's see what turn 4 will bring. Turn 4. The Leshavult win the initiative and Brother Daniel lets Lubart gain 1 energy. Eric spends 1 energy to cast Revitalize on Lubart and declares a blue 2. He has to reveal because he targets a model with an arcane ability within 2 inches of Graddock, and Lubart heals for 2. Eric spends another energy and targets himself, and declares a blue 2 to heal for 2. And Eric jogs to engage Graddock. Graddock targets Lubart with Forgetfulness, and Lubart loses Righteous Fury. And Graddock attacks Lubart. Lubart spends 1 energy to go for it. Lubart shows a high and a low guard, a fallen swing and a rising attack. Graddock plays a thrust, and Lubart a rising attack. Graddock deals 2 wounds on Lubart, and Lubart deals 3 on Graddock. Gwendoline jogs and spends 3 energy to cast Rejuvenate on Daniel and declares a pink 1. Daniel heals for 2 and is moved 1 inch. And Gwendoline steps twice. Quarrel jogs and spends all his energy to use Brothers in Arms twice on Billy and once on Graddock. Lubart takes a reaction step. Lubart spends 1 energy to attack Graddock. Lubart plays a Fallen Swing and Graddock a High Guard, and upgrades into his signature move, the Old Slip Step. No damage is dealt because Lubart is not in Graddock's melee range, but Graddock can move 1 inch during the end step. Billy jogs. This time he's allowed 2 inches because he carries a Moonstone, and spends 2 energy for a Hi-Ho Silver. He can draw 7 cards because he has an arcane stat of 4, +1 for Mama Gimbal within 4 inches, and +2 because of Brothers in Arms. And he declares a pink 3 and can move 6 inches. And he spends his last energy to attack Gwendoline. He plays 2 rising attacks and Gwendoline a High Guard. She can upgrade into her signature move, Dreamglade Glamour, but it just prevents future attacks, and she suffers 5 wounds. Brother Daniel spends 2 energy to cast a Bell Ringer and declares a pink 2, and Gwendoline heals for 2. Daniel jogs and steps once. Hello, this is Editing Julian speaking. We forgot that Daniel has a 2-inch engagement range and could have stopped at 2 inches to use his last energy for an attack where Billy cannot do any damage. But the view from a distance is always easier and things get lost in the heat of battle. Anyway, back to the game. Mama Gimbal spends 2 to heal Graddock and declares a blue 2 to heal him for 3. She jogs for 2 and steps once. And that's the end of the turn. 3 Moonstones for each troop. So, you know what time it is.
Sudden death.
The Leshavult win the initiative and Brother Daniel lets Gwendoline gain 1 energy. He activates, casts Bellringer and declares a pink 2 and Gwendoline heals for 2. Billy attacks Gwendoline and Gwendoline spends 1 energy to go for it. Billy plays a Fallen Swing and Gwendoline a High Guard, and she can upgrade into her signature move, Dreamglade Glamour, and Billy cannot target her with melee attacks until the end of the turn. And Billy attacks Brother Daniel. Daniel spends 1 to go for it. Billy plays a Fallen Swing and Daniel a High Guard, and can follow up with a Sweeping Cut, and can upgrade into his signature move, Thwack. He can deal 2 wounds on Billy, and Billy suffers -1 on his melee stat until the end of the turn. And Billy attacks again. Billy plays 2 thrusts, and Daniel a low guard, and suffers 2 wounds. Still no Moonstones on the ground. A good defense by the Leshavult. Eric attacks Graddock. Eric plays 2 Fallen Swings, and Graddock 3 rising attacks. Graddock suffers 6 wounds because Eric can choose to not declare slicing, and Eric suffers 3. Eric attacks again, and Graddock goes for it. Eric plays a thrust, and Graddock 3 rising attacks, and both are slain. Quarrel reloads and shoots at Lubart and declares a green 3. Lubart suffers 6 wounds and is pushed 1 inch away, and jogs to get in base contact with the Moonstone. Gwendoline casts Rejuvenate on Lubart and declares a pink 3. Lubart heals 4 wounds and is moved 3 inches. Mama Gimble jogs, steps once and uses Mother's Love on Billy. She cannot move, he moves and heals for 2, and she rests on her last energy. Lubart attacks Quarrel. Lubart plays a Fallen Swing and Quarrel plays a Fallen Swing. Lubart deals 2 on Quarrel and he attacks again. Lubart plays a Thrust and Quarrel a High Guard and upgrades into his signature move, Tactical Retreat, and can move 2 inches. Quarrel lives to see another round and Mama Gimble takes a reaction step. And that is the end of the turn. Still no change in Moonstone count, so we go into another round of
Sudden Death.
In the replenish step, Eric is back. As Vassal of Leshavult, he restores half of his wounds and appears next to Billy. And Brother Daniel is so happy to see him that he lets Eric gain 1 energy. The Leshavult win the initiative and Eric attacks Billy. Eric plays a Sweeping Cut and Billy a Thrust. Eric can follow up with a Rising Attack and Billy suffers 2 wounds. And Eric attacks again. He plays a Fallen Swing and Billy 2 thrusts. And Eric suffers 4 wounds and is slain. Mama Gimble takes a reaction step and Billy activates and attacks Gwendoline. Both spend 1 energy to go for it. Billy plays a Fallen Swing and Gwendoline a Low Guard. Billy can deal 3 wounds on Gwendoline. Gwendoline takes a reaction step and Billy jogs to hunt her down. He attacks again and Gwendoline spends 1 to go for it. Billy plays a Rising Attack and Gwendoline a Low Guard, and she can follow up with a Fallen Swing to deal 1 wound on Billy. Daniel is out of Billy's melee range and attacks. Daniel plays a Fallen Swing and Billy a Thrust. No damage. Daniel attacks again. He plays a Thrust and Billy a High Guard. No damage again. Daniel attacks. He plays a Fallen Swing and Billy a High Guard. Still no damage. Mama Gimble jogs and uses Mother's Love on Billy and rests on her last energy. Lubart steps twice to get in base contact with the stone. Quarrel steps once, jogs for 2 and reloads his crossbow. Gwendoline jogs and steps once, and Mama Gimble takes a reaction step. Still no winner. So, let's continue. I know you wanna hear it, Paolo, with another round of
Sudden Death.
The Leshavult win the initiative, and Gwendoline jogs and steps twice. Billy jogs to get in base contact with Daniel and attacks. Daniel spends 1 to go for it. Billy plays 2 Rising Attacks and Daniel 2 Sweeping Cuts. Billy deals 5 wounds, Brother Daniel 4, but Daniel is slain. 2 Moonstones fall to the ground and the game is finally over. A win for the Commonwealth. That was a lot of sudden death. You think it's a fast one because just anybody has to lose a stone, but then you have melee combats where nothing is really happening. A few positioning mistakes here and there for sure. For example, a Callista walking next to Lubart was an awesome target for young Jack, because the 3-inch melee range from Lubart are very hard to deal with as a gnome player. You just don't want to be within 1 inch of him. Lubart didn't see much sweeping cuts, but when he does and someone is within 1 inch, it's good night and sleep tight, wrapped in chains. Either way, I don't want to dive too deep in the tactical intricacies. We tried our best to bring a good game to you and hope it was fun and interesting to watch. If you cannot get enough of Moonstone, check out Paolo's YouTube channel. He's recording games in the Tabletop simulator and is doing live streams on Twitch. You'll find an awesome variety of troops and battle reports on his channel. Or check out the legend himself, Daniel from Ye Olde Battle Raps. He's doing Moonstone review battle reports since the beginning of time. And he's also the host of a wonderful Moonstone podcast. And check out Joe's blog, where you can find articles of different Moonstone topics. He's also organizing the Mischief and Mayhem tournament in Bristol at the end of August. Oh, at the time of recording this, I think... Oh, the tournament... Yeah, sorry for that. The tournament has already been done, dealt with. I think I cut it out. Thank you. The links to all those wonderful people are in the description down below. You know what you can do to help the channel. Like, share, comment and subscribe, but most importantly, I want to thank you for watching. I will paint up some minis, edit more footage and hope to see you soon for another battle report out of the breach. Jack takes a reaction step away from Flubart. And Gwendoline steps once. Oh, she steps twice.